Louisville did much better this past week than they looked in week 1 at the Carrier Dome, beat UCF. So they're not necessarily going to be the pushover that many believed after losing to Syracuse by 24 points. But another shot at Malik Cunningham.
Yeah, I think there was
I've seen him a few times.
There was a lot of confidence in the Garden and Gold Nation after watching that first game against Syracuse, thinking, hey, this game might be a little bit easier. Florida State might get their first win over the Cardinals since the 2019 season. But, Logan, I'm not going to lie to you, and I know you like to call me the eternal pessimist here with MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, but watching them play against UCF, I'm growing concerned. And Big Game James talked about a little bit last week about Malik Cunningham being the running quarterback, but seeing what Louisville did against a UCF team that I think on paper UCF is a better team than Syracuse, is there any concern for you right now that the real Louisville showed up against UCF?
For the game against UCF, Malik Cunningham played better. I mean, he played good. He didn't have the 2 interceptions like he did against Syracuse. He rushed for over 100 yards. That's the Malik Cunningham that you're expecting out of him. The game against Syracuse just didn't feel like true Malik, and Satterfield's talked about that. They felt like they've kind of handcuffed him a little bit to start this season. They want to get him going a lot more, and that's what they're going to do. I'm expecting on Friday night, give him more opportunities to utilize his skill sets, which is being a dual threat quarterback, definitely. And the run game there, whenever he sees nothing open down the field. Florida State has had a rough time in the past being able to contain and guard some of these wide receivers that are talented coming out of Louisville. If you look back at last year too, I mean, explosive play left and right. There was no contain of those guys at some parts of those quarters. And so Florida State, Mike Norvell hasn't been successful in beating Satterfield, something that, Mike going into this game understands. And I feel like he has the same kind of confidence that he had going into Louisville. I was kind of on the same page with you, Jason, earlier over the weekend, because I was still wondering, is this team mature enough? Are they going to get over that glory that they got, the national attention, beating LSU? And, that FSU team made a lot of mistakes in that game. I mean, multiple missed touchdowns, putting points on the board. You've got missed kicks. You've got kicks going out of bounds, things that really hurt Florida State where they almost should have lost that game. They still were able to hang on and win it. They're going into this game, it's a lot of, hey, hopefully the film helped. Hopefully doing a few more different things and practice helped, understanding your weaknesses after 2 games, and you go in and you fix those and erase those. And all of that is all going to depend on the maturity of this team and if they're going to stay disciplined, because, Louisville has had a tough time to start off the season being undisciplined. Florida State has done a good job on their side of things, of staying, pretty on par with making sure that they're making the correct assignments and also not making many mistakes, allowing penalties. This game is going to come down to, hey, have we matured since last season? Are we able to move on from that LSU win? It worries me a tad, but after what we saw in practice this week, I liked what I saw, and that's one thing that I will always go off of when making predictions. Is this team dialed in? Are they competing well? Are they listening well? And is what Mike Norvell cooking up in practice looking good? And what I like what I've seen in the last 2 practices.
You talked about that a little bit. Obviously, Florida State, first true road game of the season, coming in as a 2.5-point favorite over Louisville. That surprised me a little bit that it was that close, but I'll take being a favorite for once in a while. You talked about a little bit of that. We talked about the mistakes. We talked about the errors against LSU. What did Florida State go through? This is obviously their first real practice for Louisville week. What did Florida State do this week in practice to address some of those issues?
Well, some of them, were things where you're looking at a limited guy in that LSU game, which was Cameron McDonald. He feels like he's back to 100%, and he's looked like it in practice. And there was some inconsistencies. There was some drop balls, and I think coming off him, not to speak for him, but he's a guy that's a senior. He's a leader on this team. That was something that he doesn't want to have that happen again. And, there's things outside of that. You look at Amarion Cooper, who's now hopefully get into a full steam ahead of fully healthy. He hasn't been fully healthy to begin the season, got dinged up a little bit in fall camp. didn't get to see him go, the first week. Then he goes against LSU, a little rusty. Now you're hoping that he's into a groove because Ronaldo Green on the other side has looked great. That's cornerback one, in my opinion. He's looked smooth and looked good. But on the other side, is Marlon Cooper going to step up here? Greedy Vance, too, in this game should be fun to watch. There's a lot of things that go into it where, there's some edge. You look at Jared Jackson, too, transfer from Louisville. You look at Jordan Travis, transfer from Louisville. There's a lot of extra juice that goes into this one because on the other side, you've got Jarvis Brownlee, who is a very animated player. We had that at Florida State. He's a very animated guy. Causes penalties too. I'm keeping that in mind going into Friday night and how he's going to look against FSU. We'll talk later about the game plan and what we expect it to be and all that kind of stuff. But Florida State's biggest thing to me is on the road being disciplined, and if they end up doing that, they've got the skill. We've seen it so far. I know we've only seen 2 games, but if they can take advantage of not allowing penalties or staying on their assignments, then this team is better than Louisville with talent and skill set around Jordan Travis and the defense right now.
Yeah, you talked a little bit about that. Brownlee, obviously the Miami native, transferred after last season from Florida State. He said he has this game circled on his calendar. He's had Florida State circled on his calendar.